War Stories. Welcome back to part 3 of my conversation with fellow actor Alex Collins. Everyone, I'm Matthew Cornwell with Get Taped here in Atlanta, Georgia, one of Atlanta's original audition taping services, which I co-own with my amazingly talented, beautiful wife and best friend, Brooke. Side note, we just had an amazing open house at Get Taped in our new studio where we gave away, I think, over $1,700 worth of prizes that were in the form of tapings, workshop, classes, swag, and more. And we're so excited to start new classes this week. My on-camera class is full, improv still has spaces, and we have a free preview event for the Sam Christensen image process. So if you're interested in any of that, check the links in the show notes below. Okay, now for part 3 of my conversation with Alex, where we talk about war stories.
Have you ever taped an actor? And usually when this happens, the actor immediately goes, "Why did I do that?" Where in the audition scene, they have to fire a gun and they actually make their own sound effect.
I've never had that happen in an audition situation or anything like that. But I've personally done that on set. I've done that on set, Matthew. So, all right, this one. Some people know this story. This comes out of the deep vault. So I just moved to LA. This is a long time ago, and I booked my very first TV show, which was a network episodic called Boston Public.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that show? Mm-hmm. And I was in the 80th episode of that show. It actually got canceled after the 79th episode, I think, 78 or 79. So my episode still aired, but like it got canceled. So the whole premise is I'm part of 82nd Airborne in Iraq, right? This is the early mid 2000s, and we're in a Hummer, going through fields, dirt roads, and we get stopped because there's a goat herder and his goats are crossing the street. And so the main guest star of the episode was played by Matthew Lawrence, and he gets out of the front of the Hummer to go usher the goat herder along. "Hey, come on, man, let's go. And then the camera cuts to the crosshairs of a sniper. And then Matthew Lawrence's character gets shot and killed by the sniper, and then chaos breaks out. This is the pre-lap, the pre-credits, the opening sequence. And so I'm in the backseat, and I hop up out into the turret of the Hummer, and I go, the first take, I'm going, cut. And I'm in the turret, the ball turret still, and the director, Michael Rappaport, he looks up at me. And you're going to have to bleep this out. He goes, "Hey, kid, what the f*** you doing?" Like, he's got his New York Yankees hat on. It's like, "Why are you making the gun sounds?" "What? You were making the gun sounds?" "I was?" "Yeah, don't do that." Okay. Go. We do the second take. And right when I go to shoot, I go, and I let my body muscles, like, do what the gun would do. And so I caught myself. But yeah, highly embarrassing. That was so long ago, I got my footage on VHS.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. And that alone, I mean, we could do war stories, double meaning there.
I mean, these aren't necessarily things just on the newer end of acting, right? These things still happen.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I do a lot of work in period pieces, right? So there's costumes and wigs and beards and stuff like that. But I had the good fortune of playing a superhero. DC superhero on Stargirl. And my first big scene is really the introduction and sort of the backstory of my character. And it's me and number 1 on the call sheet. And I have a 5-page monologue, and we're shooting on a Fraturday. It's 1 a.m. when we're doing this. And it requires me to elevator doors open. I come out of the elevator, hit my first mark, go down 3 steps, hit a second mark, and then hit a third mark, all while navigating the cape of the superhero costume, which is a very heavy cape. I also have thick leather gloves on, and I also have to take off my goggles, my superhero goggles, hand them to number 1 on the call sheet, engage in dialogue, take them back, and put them on the right way. And there's an upside down to the goggles, but I can't feel them. And here's where it's a kicker. I can't look at them to check because my character is blind. So when I'm not wearing the goggles, I have to close my eyes, otherwise these things happen to me. So it's self-preservation to close my eyes. So I have to trust that the actor, number one on the call sheet, is going to hand me the goggles correctly, and then I'm going to put them back on correctly and not upset. I can't feel them in these thick leather work gloves. I was convinced I was going to trip on my cape, trip down the stairs, mess this up, and get fired. 20 years into it at that point, more than 20 years, convinced I'm going to get fired from the show.
Oh gosh, yeah. Pandoras Box, because for the menu, I've told the story. I can't remember if I've told it on one of the videos, but my character draws a gun. So the prop guy, who's also a weapons master, he's getting my belt on, and he's putting the holster on, but it's a right-handed holster, and I'm a lefty. And as he's putting it on, I say, "Ooh, I'm left-handed," and he just went, "Ooh, I don't have a left-handed holster." And then he just kept working. So it's like, okay. And now, of course, heavy lifting is going to be the first scene up. Just always assume that actors.
It's always
your worst nightmare in terms of what they're going to shoot first is always what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. Your coverage is almost always going to come first because it gives the lead a chance to essentially have an extra rehearsal. So when all things are equal, they're going to shoot your coverage first. If the other lead needs to get wrapped earlier than you, there's a chance they'll go first, and then you'll be acting to a stand-in or a piece of tape. But most celebrities are cooler than that. They'll stay there. And sometimes when they have to be wrapped, it's because they have a very good reason to be wrapped. But anyways, so I had to learn how, and I'm not a firearms expert. I don't have a lot of training there, but I'm a quick study. But it's just not ideal to be learning with my non-dominant hand. And he's teaching me the way law enforcement is, like you pull it up and then push it out, right? Pull it up. But then I have to put on this very bulky rain jacket.
Yeah.
And the thing that underlies all of this, right, the putting on the goggles, is that in real life, it's not a big deal, right? Even if you're blind, you would even with the leather gloves, you would take the time up, they're on backwards. But you can't do that on film. It's got to be cool, right? It's got to be smooth. And there's that pressure that you're going to have to do another one if you stumble. And so if I don't draw this correctly, or we have to do another take. And the way we shot the menu was done very much like cinema verite, handheld, not quite documentary, but always wanting to do full takes of 5-minute scenes. We're not shooting this in pieces. We did very few pickups. So it meant that, the first take we're doing, it's going to be a full take, and I don't have to draw this until 3 minutes in. So in the back of my mind, right, as I'm doing everything else, I'm just thinking about that part of the scene, I hope it goes well. I hope I do it right. I hope I can push the jacket back, unhook the safety on the holster, pull it up, do this without the bulkiness of this jacket getting in the way, and look badass doing it,
And then your brain starts tricking you, like, well, what if I pre-open the holster so it's a smoother exit for the gun? Well, that's not realistic because you can't walk around with an unholstered gun, right? They're gonna be like, look at that guy. So yeah, there's all these little things that even as an experienced, you're 20 years into the game shooting the menu, right? It still happens. That made me think of, I did a movie called Shock and Awe. And my scene, sort of one of the opening scenes of the movie, establishes 9/11. It happens the morning of 9/11, and it's a scene with Woody Harrelson. And I'm essentially holding him like a hostage, and then I have a machine gun that I then have to put in his face. Well, I'm right-handed. It's a right-handed gun. No problem there, right? First rehearsal, and there's a lot of walk and talk and movement and things that have to work right. And it's a handheld shot, and the camera has to whip around this way. And so I throw Woody down, and I do the gun, and then I pull the trigger. It's a fake, it just clicks. There's nothing in there. And then there's a reveal. Well, that didn't work for camera. So they're like, why don't you hold it like it's a left-handed gun? Well, we've just talked about right-handed, left-handed. So I now have to hold it backwards, but it's still a right-handed gun. So you load this way, trigger this way. So I'm having to flip that and now angle my body around. I'm like, this is so I can't, it's unrealistic. It would come from this side, but they don't care.
But it looks great for camera.
But it looks great for camera.
Yeah.
And that kind of illustrates also ego. Mm-hmm. It's my ego that was like, I'm going to look dumb.
Sure.
Military people are going to know this isn't accurate. Yeah. but the movie's not about my character. Nobody knows who I am. It's about starting Woody Harrelson's character on his journey. No one 6 minutes into the movies go, that's it, I'm turning it off. The gun was backwards. It was a right-handed gun and he's holding it left hand. That's it, I'm done. And so we also, I think as actors, have to be flexible and realize the ego, let it go. Yeah. You know, one more example of that from Lovecraft Country, I worked with a really experienced actor. He's fantastic. His name is Mac Brandt. He's in everything. He's a really good, great mustache actor as well, by the way. Yeah, he's a really good one. And he had to learn this spell. We were members of the occult, right? And he has to learn this like 16-line, 4-stanza spell. And the guy who wrote it is the same guy who created the Dothraki language. So there's a lot of guttural sort of things. And there's a rhythm and a melody to learning that. He shows up to set. He's had this thing for like 2 weeks. Shows up to set, and the showrunner goes, so we're going to cut this verse, this line, and this line. And he's like, got it. Seamless transition, because he didn't let his ego get in the way. And one of the other actors asked him, he's like, isn't that frustrating? And he goes, yeah, but like it's not about me, number one. And number two, I don't get paid by the word. And that's a really important thing. Our ego is like, oh, they cut one of my scenes. They cut some of my lines. And yeah, that stings a little bit, especially earlier in your career where you need the footage. But we don't get paid by the word. We get paid by the day, or if we're lucky, we get paid by the week, or we get paid by the episode, or we get paid by the season, and we get to create. Like, that's fantastic. And that's a really liberating thing. I don't get paid by the word. That allows me to roll with the punches and just stay connected.
I think a great overall sort of note that I really subscribe to is, and I think this is partly my personality, which is early on in the 2000s, I was also, entering contests. I was on the other side of the camera. I was creating. I was writing, producing, directing, editing. I've learned a lot of editing. And having those hats, having worn all of those hats, it's really helpful in those moments to understand the bigger picture. I've watched celebrities argue with directors as to like, this doesn't make any sense. I would see the thing and then it's supposed to be like a surprise. It's like, just, and then you see the final edit. It's like until the audience sees it, it doesn't exist. So even though you physically see it, so I've seen celebrities argue because they can't quite see the editor's perspective of like, in the edit, this will make perfect sense. And I think for actors, if you can do things to learn, I mean, part of this is just about your own curiosity. You can't really like force curiosity, but the more you do understand the director's side of things, the sound person side of things, that's why we did the other series of videos in this space with all of those departments, because to me, it's just endlessly fascinating to hear a sound person's perspective on filmmaking and how, and how all these departments aren't there to make my job harder. Which is the mentality that some actors have. Like, why are you making this harder, telling me I can't touch my own clothing? It's like, well, do you want your voice to end up on this? But understanding that, then like I had a recent experience where we were filming in a van on a soundstage, but then like right at the last second, they said they couldn't rock the van because they had a dolly track going into the back of the van, so it would have just and to whatever. So like, so remember, you're actually in motion. So if you can get, and I'm the only actor standing in the van, the other guy, sitting, so he doesn't have to do anything. So at the last second, it's like, oh yeah. And don't forget, the van's in motion. I'm like, oh great. So not only am I in a van that I can't stand up fully, but I've got to now organically rock, but not too much, because you don't want to look stupid. But enough that it makes sense. But it allows me in that moment to go, oh, I understand this. The director doesn't hate me. The director's not trying to make me look stupid in this moment. I get it. Like I get that subtlety when they cut to a wide shot and they show this van going over a bumpy road in the desert or whatever, wherever we were. I don't even know. Because we were on a soundstage. And but then when they cut inside, it'll match, to have that swing. And the more actors can learn about other sort of aspects of filmmaking, or to watch, whatever you're going to watch tonight on your streamer, and to not always just watch it for the pure entertainment value, but to whatever you learned in acting class, whatever you sort of been learning about, to actually try to see that happen in that final product and reverse engineer it, so to speak. To me, it just makes the onset experience that much less about ego, that much easier to collaborate, less anxiety. There's still the obstacles and, having to do the actual thing. But I've been able to sort of not ever put that on the director or these other departments of like, why are you making this harder? If anything, it's an inexperienced co-star on set with me who doesn't get the same notes. I've had that happen, a walk and talk, 3 cameras, and the co-star who same amount of lines as me, but flown in from LA. That's another discussion for another day. And I keep getting notes from the 3 cameras saying, Matthew, I can't see you. Because there was 3 of us, series regular, doing his job. This other co-star who is part of this walk and talk keeps changing his landing point. And so when I adjust to get in to make sure that I'm on camera 3 or, the C camera, now I've just obscured myself from camera A, but it's because this guy won't ever hit the same mark twice. But he's visible to all 3 cameras. So of course he's not getting any notes. No one's putting 2 and 2 together. And as the co-star, I don't want to be like, it's this guy's fault. This is why I can't service all 3 of those cameras, because this guy doesn't know how to hit a mark. You don't want to do that. And so, but to kind of know, like, I'm not angry at those camera operators. If anything, it's this inexperienced actor.
Oh gosh, you just gave me PTSD from the in-person audition days. Remember, you would go into commercial auditions with a group, and there was usually an actor that would do that same thing, right? Jump on a line, kill your mark, whatever it was. And you can let it tank your audition, or you can breathe, find a solution, let it help your audition, and potentially let them tank themselves.
I could go on forever with those types of war stories, as I'm sure Alex could too, since we're both 20 plus years into this journey. We have one more segment that will drop next week in this interview. And so in the meantime, if you have any questions or comments, drop them below. That's it for now. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on set.